All right, well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Victoria Leigh. I'm a graduating public relations major with an emphasis in media relations. And I wanted to thank you for coming to my summit presentation. I will be speaking on future adaptation and visualization within the public relations industry. That's definitely a mouthful, but I'll be breaking it down with feasible concepts for about 10 minutes or so, and then we can break it down with any more questions that you guys have in the end. So in order to talk about virtual reality, I wanted to give a context with technology and the digital media and digital communication as of this day and age. You guys may have seen these funky contraptions in stores near you or even schools, classrooms. They're everywhere. As of this year, they made $15.8 million in revenue, and it's continued to skyrocket as VR is used more and more so in everyday life. That sounds pretty intimidating, but it's actually pretty exciting. I have many experiences of using VR with just at the house with friends. We played around with it, but I've also used it with different careers and different internships and different fun places to go to. With VR, in case you are not familiar, it is basically a very simple device that allows you to experience a different simulation or another experience with technology. So in case you haven't used one of these, you can just prop open the lid, and this is the most basic form you can get in. VR is available with more advanced computers, more advanced technology. You can actually write and see it with technology and have it recorded 3D models. In fact, the latest TV show I was watching used VR in a medical scene where they were testing how to do surgery on a heart. It was pretty cool. But basically, what I do when I want to have fun with VR is I download an app. It could be a roller coaster ride, Jurassic Park, the moon landscape, and I just put it into the VR headset, and I put this around my head, over my eyes, and you're already plugged into the simulation. It is pretty lifelike, so caution to those of you who get motion sickness pretty easily, because it can happen. And it is kind of funny to see people walking around with these headsets in an actual area, space, oblivious to the physical reality around them. And that's because they're plugged into the virtual reality, which is very, very lifelike. So of course this brings about new conversations with what will life look like in the future. In fact, I saw a recent movie trailer which looked very interesting, where the world has plummeted, the economy is going down, and cities are overcrowded, it's dirty, but no one knows because every day they plug into their VR headset. And they do their jobs in seats, plain dirty seats, but with the VR headset, it looks like they're in a nice spacious office. It's fascinating what the future implications are for PR. So I wanted to discuss the context regarding communication with VR, because of course this is going to affect how we communicate. Now there's been this lifelong theory with communication that it's most effective face-to-face. I don't think any of us can deny that. If you see someone read their nonverbals, of course this includes IQ and EQ, then you can better understand what they're saying. The message is carried out more efficiently and usually more successfully. And of course this taps into PR terms that we use often in regards to authenticity and audience interaction. You will be able to understand what they are telling you and possibly even put yourself in their shoes. At its core, this is empathy. And really, at the core of VR, this is the most important factor of it. So looking at virtual reality and empathy, I was seeing different quotes from current thought leaders and communications professionals, and this quote really struck me. Virtual reality is the ultimate empathy machine. Dr. Chan Pacheco actually offers virtual reality classes and 360 video recording classes and webinars for you to learn how to dive into this new form of communication. Fascinating. And his point was saying that, you know, that old phrase of, man, you had to be there, if only you were there, really doesn't apply anymore, because not only can it be recorded and watched later and experienced later, but if you are not physically able to be present, you can be present virtually and potentially grasp the same exact content to the same level in a different location, such and so forth. It's fascinating to see how this could be applied to classroom settings, to work life, to entertainment and such. So I wanted to think of how this applies specifically PR, and these were the 5 topics that came to my head. There are TED Talks about this I'd encourage you to watch. There are movies about it. There are many, many articles, and as this becomes more and more relevant to today, I encourage you to be just as informed about it. Now I want to give you a preface of artificial intelligence and augmented reality are already currently being used in PR tactics and real-world life. For example, if you guys remember in 2011, Watson, he's a supercomputer, he's this software that learns and is fascinating to interact with. He won Ultimate Jeopardy! This was a milestone for the company that, of course, created Watson and for any other person that might want to use artificial intelligence. To this day, Watson now uses many, many, many algorithms, and he helps thousands of PR agencies, marketing agencies, and other corporations to create messages applicable to your content desired. So whether it's you clicking on Facebook and seeing an ad, that could very well be AI being used in marketing plans and such, and communication plans with PR. So these are the three that I want to give, but use some more insight on. But please know that AI and AR are already being discussed, so I won't tap into those. I'm specifically tapping into VR with these implications. So first, with media outlets and media sourcing. This is going to completely change how news is portrayed, and thus, with a PR outlook, how campaigns will be developed, pitched, and experienced. Of course, this changes the whole dynamic, the role of publisher, broadcaster. Just like we saw the change with journalism, citizen journalism, there's now new ways for the average citizen to participate in an ongoing developing story. Same way with VR. This is going to completely change how one could record and share with others the experience. In this ever-growing, technologically savvy world, there are new ways for you to immediately have access to an audience, which can be both very exciting and scary, positive and detrimental. If someone publishes or broadcasts a fake news story or even a misguided, twisted campaign, that could still potentially affect many people. It is no longer face-to-face. And so the roles are going to greatly change with who can produce VR material and thus influence an audience because of it. Simultaneously, content generators and audiences, this taps into who is experiencing it as well as who is publishing it. There are now many schools that are offering classes with VR, video recording, and other kind of new technological advances so that the normal person is really knowledgeable with how to approach these. So if you have the potential, the capability to produce this content on your own, you could, even without an agency, even without a media group or a marketing company, you could potentially have a very strong voice. New freedoms with mass media. This is specifically in regards to my emphasis with media relations. I can envision PR professionals no longer having to pitch to media to get a campaign or a story highlighted or other kind of earned media. Because with VR, you are now more in charge of creating a very engaging, communicative strategy and campaign with your audience. Finally, redefine credibility and trustworthiness. I think of VR as a great new option for people to trust news stories and PR again. However, I also see it as a potential for misguided or harmful, damaging content as well to the average person. What will the rating system be like? How do you discern what is too much to be experienced virtually and what is enough to just be paraphrased or to be represented on a different level? So these are fascinating new conversations that people are discussing. Competitors and collaborators. There are already PR agencies, media groups, marketing companies that are implementing these VR strategies. And so of course there's going to be a new grappling over the content that's on social media, that's in the media in general. We are in a fast-paced environment and people want what's new, what's exciting. So whoever can get the best VR experience out there is going to win. And when I was at the last National PRSA conference, we attended at PRSA Icon a fascinating presentation of the man who created Super Size Me. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It was widely acclaimed throughout the US. Schools watched it. It was in the movies. It affected a large audience. And that was just one small example of how one individual with innovative thinking and with the technological capabilities produced a message to a great audience. So now those big companies are competing with individuals. It changes the entire job landscape as well. Finally, with clear ethical codes. I mentioned this earlier, but as a Biola student, we are grounded in ethical principles, not just because we are encouraged to communicate honestly and openly, and to let every word be in truth and in every deed be honorable to God, but also because as a PR professional, you are agreeing to abide by a code of ethics. PRSA has provided a great list and summary of ethics by which one should abide by when operating in public relations. these apply just as much to virtual reality, but I do believe there's going to be a need to emphasize in these ethics more specifically. In regards to virtual reality, Professor Stu and I have had great conversations about media ethics along with Dr. Longano and what is to be published, what video should be posted, should that shooting be broadcasted, should it just be recapped, what are the limits? Audiences can now have access to almost anything. And as watchdogs, as PR representatives, how are we guarding or helping, guiding what information is produced to an audience? So this is very interesting to me because I am driven with my Biola background, with my biblical context, and with my desire to produce good content for people to abide ethically with VR. I could imagine a scenario where something is so damaging to a person when they've put their VR headset on that they never want to experience a VR simulation again. So what does that look like? Or it could be something so fascinating that they decide to plug out of the physical world. What is the balance there? I think there's a code of ethics that's going to need to be written down and abided by for PR professionals. In regards to transparency and accuracy, this is something I'm excited about because I do believe it is an opportunity, a potential for improvement with PR, with reliability. PR has a history of being one-sided. It has a history of spinning, but we are no longer abiding by that. We abide by two-way symmetrical communication for a mutually beneficial relationship. And you'll hear me preach that till the day I die. I am very, very focused on creating communication that is two-way. So how would VR create communication that is two-way? If it's one experience for the audience, how do they respond? Is there any way they can interact with the VR world back to the company, back to the individual, back to society? This has not yet been discussed with VR conversations, and I would like to see new discussion based on this to make it two-way. Many PR professionals are blogging about this, writing about this, but they haven't mentioned how to make it two-way. I was very surprised to find that because it's such a crucial part of public relations. So I believe we will see that in the future, if anything, from me. Creating a foundation for sustained success. Of course, this is in regards to your ethical reliability and you as an individual. My experience at Biola, if anything, has trained me in my character and individuality. And I love working in teams, I love representing a brand, but ultimately it comes back on me. I think of the Bible verse, and a man shall be known by his deeds. And I think that's exactly the case, whether it's journalism or PR. I want to be known to be honoring to God, to communicate honestly and transparently because of what I'm doing every time. And if I make a mistake, I want to honestly open up to it and own it. And I think that VR is an opportunity for people to see a stronger correlation between deed, action, word, and such message so that there's more credibility and reassurance. In regards to skills in writing and art of expression, this is a very, very fun topic with VR because it's a whole new world for creativity. I have seen videos of people having the VR headsets on and them drawing models of atoms, or them interacting with the simulation of a room and creating the furniture, if it's potentially a museum curator position, or if it's in regards to the medical field, them practicing. There's a whole new field of graphic arts and of writing capabilities as well. I think of attention economy. The latest stat on attention spans was actually pretty depressing. The average person has an attention span of 30 seconds on a given topic. So maybe I've already lost you, but hang in there. How are we going to create engaging topics for people to stay engaged in with their attention span? Content is going to need to be very informative, very quick, very reliable, and technologically flexible, whether it's VR, whether it's social media, some kind of online platform. Faster, more visual content. Of course, this regards to the actual simulation, but also descriptions of VR. If you're pitching this in a campaign, you need to be able to include this in your pitching, in your media relations. There's a high impact expression. Of course, it involves empathy throughout this whole thing. The audience, for the first time, is able to put on the headset and actually feel the circumstance, feel the situation so that their own emotions could be triggered. It's not just reading a page. Even if a story is engaging, there's still a disconnect between the paper and the reader. Whereas VR simulation, if you feel like you're right there, you're already highly involved with empathy. I want to give you just a personal insight. When I went to Peru for PRSSA, I was vice president of chapter development, and I had the incredible opportunity to do a research and case on this chapter that was doing wonderful things for public relations. However, my friend and I on the board had to create a report and pitch it to the PRSA board and PRSSA boards. There was definitely, least to say, a lack of empathy. If I could have created a VR simulation to see what those PRSSA members are doing, I think I could have had those board members in the palm of our hands. If they were there experiencing public relations in Spanish, I'm also studying Spanish here, and it's a whole new world not tapped into with PRSSA. We could greatly change the society. Along with Puerto Rico, I studied Spanish for a month in Puerto Rico. It was a great experience, and my heart breaks for them now with Hurricane Maria. If I could create a government relations campaign where someone puts on the goggles and is standing there on the destroyed island, seeing the telephone poles knocked down, seeing my burger joint down, burned to the ground or blown over, I might feel more involved, and I might want to donate, or I might want to share that social media post. There's great implications. I invite you to join the conversation. There's current discussions going on, and this is very important for you to be able to understand and participate in. This means being informed. I'll be participating in this webinar coming up. You are more than welcome to join. I would love to see you there, as well as these different opportunities. Like I said, schools are providing majors. Disneyland will be offering a whole new ride where you put on a VR headset and experience Star Wars in a whole new way. Facebook is already using AR and VR, and Paul Wilkinson, who I spoke with, would love to have Biola students talk with him and intern with him in London in regards to VR. So these are just a few aspects and ways that you could get involved. I encourage you to find a way, and that's all I'm going to present for you now regarding VR. I encourage you to engage in the conversation online, on your own. Thank you for this presentation.